Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Wednesday's CollabCast with Sam Brown. I'm your host, Sam Brown. I'm really excited today because we have an awesome partner that we've brought in with them, and we have two representatives from their team with us live today to get your questions answered. So today we're going to be talking about the evolving intranet. So in a lot of these sessions, we talk about so many different ways to communicate, whether it be chat, collaboration, even all of the apps within the Microsoft 365 landscape and beyond, third-party apps. So we're going to talk today about how the concept of an intranet or a centralized portal for your organization fits into the healthcare landscape. So if you could go to the next slide here. Everyone always asks, hey, where is this going to be recorded? Where are all the resources going to be? Don't worry, right after this, I'm going to post this in aka.ms/HLS blog. That's our healthcare and life sciences blog for Microsoft. And it will be there along with anything that we discuss on the call that's outside of just these slides. We'll also provide resource links too. We'll also give our LinkedIn, so feel free to reach out to us and contact us directly. So with that, we're just going to go over a couple of housekeeping items. So first of all, again, will be recorded. It will be at aka.ms/HLS blog. We're going to have an hour-long format as always, and we'll do a presentation by Withum, but then we'll also have Q&A. We want to make sure that you get your questions answered. We want to keep this engaging, so please ask. I'm moderating, so I'm going to address all of your questions. If it's something that just applies to your organization, I'll respond to you privately, but then we also can publish them live. If we have a common theme, that would be great for the whole audience. So definitely want to know, even if you don't have any questions or have any comments, we want to know where you're coming in from. We have people from all over the world that join these sessions, and we love to know a little bit more about you and definitely keep it engaging. So if you haven't been to a Teams live event before, it's super easy to engage the Q&A panel. It's just up on your upper right-hand corner. There's that little box with a question mark in it. That's all you have to do. Just click there. It will open a little box at the bottom. Yeah, right here. You can add in your name. You can keep it anonymous. Again, we'd love to know who you are, where you're from. But feel free to write any questions, any comments right there in the Q&A. And again, we'll be moderating for you. So with that, want to get onto the presentation here. I have a couple of people that I'd love to introduce, and they're going to go ahead and tell you more about themselves as well. But we have Daniel Cohen-Dumani. He's a partner and market leader at Withum. And then we also have Adam Levithan, and he's a practice manager at Withum. So with that, I'll turn it over to you guys.
Thank you, Sam, and good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here today. We appreciate the opportunity to talk about intranet, a subject very dear to myself. I've been in that space for almost 20 years now, bring a lot of expertise around Microsoft 365, SharePoint, and little tidbits interesting is I started working with Microsoft SharePoint when nobody could even spell the word, right? It was a brand new concept back in 2001. And I'm very passionate about productivity in the modern workplace and what many people call the new way of working or work 2.0. So again, welcome everybody. And Adam, you're next.
Thanks, Sam. Thanks, Daniel. So yeah, happy to be here. Practice manager with them, working with many clients on building their intranets. And now, in context here, intranets are not just those informational portals, but flow seamlessly into collaboration. Been working with Office 365, SharePoint, Microsoft 365 for over 14 years. And, it's really always about your business strategy and having technology support that. And that's what I really try to do when working with clients, and hopefully we'll give you some ideas today on how to apply this in your organizations.
So with that, let's get started with the topic of today, which is evolving intranet. And we want to put that in context for the healthcare and life science world. And what we're going to take you today is taking three real case studies. We hidden the name of those organizations. One healthcare system with multiple facility across a regional area, a senior living facility with a lot of different facility around the US and the world, a pharmaceutical industry with research, development, marketing, and manufacturing arm. And we're going to take you through the world of evolving intranet in the context of those three organizations. So with that, context, what is an intranet? And many of you may have heard the term digital workplace, right? Because an intranet is a digital workplace, an environment where you can easily connect people, which hold a lot of knowledge, have expertise with content, files, documents, chats, and other things, and of course data, which are databases and other data sets around your organization. And you want to do that in a context of security. Security is critical when you connect those three different actors. And as you connect this, come the world of process, automation, mobility, and bringing all of it together. And it's been our experience that the Microsoft 365 platform is a great platform to bring collaboration, teamwork in a very secure environment, specifically for the healthcare industry. So Intranet Everywhere, that's a concept that we have at Withum has been pitching and using over the last probably 12 months, right? You probably know that Microsoft Teams is a new product. It's been out for about 3 years, 3.5 years. We've been using it in our groups at Withum's for almost 3.5 years. And as Teams came out and grow with adoption, we're talking about over 80 million people using Teams daily now. It has changed the landscape of what an intranet is, right? There are a lot of systems into a healthcare organization to support your healthcare records, your labs, your communication, the care management, the internal processes. A lot of organizations are looking to move to Teams to support patient care, to chat, to call, to send important messages. And many organizations also are looking to migrate all knowledge and portals to a new system, while at the same time keeping people attention. So example of chat system, virtual meeting, training, portal HR, and intranet labs. So that's the context of the challenge we see when we talk about having an intranet that's available everywhere.
Yeah, and I think what we're going to talk about today is how to actually physically put it everywhere. The common challenge as someone here, and I know Sam is asking, where is everyone from? Would love also to know what roles you're in, because different activities are different, whether you're a business owner responsible for marketing and communications, from human resources, from IT, and what your goals are. Sometimes it's just a pure technology migration, but the best migrations are ones that are taking into consideration your business processes. So, with that, where are people working? What are they doing? And so real quick, we'll talk about a traditional intranet, a corporate landing page in SharePoint. And so this is what people force on the browser when it starts up. And we have across many of our clients analytics that demonstrate just because it is the starting point for everyone when they are going into the browser doesn't mean they are staying there, and doesn't mean that they're reading the information. So that means that it's not the right place. That's not what they're using the browser for. And across healthcare also, this is really more a use case for a knowledge worker now, for someone like myself who's at a desk at all time, not for people who are on their feet, moving around a facility, moving from facility to facility, or just different parts of the area, and they need a more mobile experience. Or they're actually doing patient care in Teams, and that's where they're living, that's where they're communicating, that's where their every moment is. So why would they come outside of Teams? Now, the great part, as you probably all know, about the Microsoft 365 ecosystem is it's not one or the other, it's both at the same time. That any effort that you put in to the traditional intranet on a web page, you can also pass that to other areas. And so, we'll talk a little bit more in the second piece about adoption strategies, but what I wanted to show you compared to here, where there's an intranet with the most common items that are company news, quick links to the most important pieces, events. Here we actually have a Teams web part that Withum built to bring a corporate-wide chat into the life. So, we're pushing and pulling information from SharePoint into Teams. And then on the next slide, we show a slightly different version of the interface, the intranet, as an app in Teams. And so, in healthcare, it depends on what type of organization you're in, but you might be more than the 5,000 person limit for a team. You might want to divide the experience up, and the Teams applications actually allow you to target these intranets to different divisions, facilities, however you'd like to segregate that. So while it pulls information from a lot of different places, it can be a really specific experience for the users. And you can see here that it sits right in Teams, right where everyone's doing all their work as an app. In this case, of course, it's my job, so I've put the intranet on the top. So now people are living in the hub of teamwork. They can go and access the knowledge information that you're training them to be in the intranet. And so, this is a high-level introduction of how an intranet can be anywhere. But what's most important if you're responsible for building or you're interested in receiving content is that building it once, you can distribute the content to many different areas so people can have those different avenues to see it. So this is how the intranet is evolving. We recognize people's behavior is not to spend time on web pages as much anymore. Luckily, we're moving outside of Outlook and into the hub of teamwork, where we can do lots of different types of work all in one interface. So we need that access to the land of knowledge, as I call it, that isn't currently available. And with this app, you can have it both in SharePoint, in a web page, and in Teams side by side. So with that, unless there are any questions, Sam, we can move on to our next topic.
Yeah, I think we can keep going.
Okay, great. So centralizing corporate communications. Daniel?
So what are the common challenges around corporate communication in a healthcare environment? And to start, communication, if you have a communication department or marketing department that's in charge of communication, those folks have to work with a lot of different systems to communicate. And I think that as Teams was introduced, it added yet another place to potentially drive communication. So too many systems, and that's a challenge, right? Healthcare also has a lot of specialized roles, resulting in different priorities, right? If you're working in patient care, you may have needs for communication that are different than if you're working in a more administrative position. So having targeted communication is another very common challenge around centralized communication. And let's also be conscious that it's often hard to reach individual, and working now in the world, in a crisis with COVID around us has even made that challenge even more acute. And you want to be able to reach individual where they are most likely to read and consume that content, right? So example of mass communication include mass email messages. That's the old-fashioned way, right? Maybe an intranet landing page, or facility signage where you have digital billboard where you can push information as well. So lots of interesting challenge when it comes to centralized communication.
Right, and the different clients that we've been working with across healthcare, you're talking about reaching many people in many different places, and traditional methods that even with the best analytics, you're not 100% sure if people are reading them. Again, something that drives me, working with SharePoint for so long, is doing work once and having the information be reusable and trackable. So compared to the mass emailing messages that are going out into your email box and being either deleted or just never looked at, and not being able to really search or find them again, once you have that information with a centralized communication process, you'll be able to find it again, reuse it, reference it. This is also great. Another example is for IT organizations. Posting those updates about, oh, you're going to have a new laptop, or this is going to be a change. Instead of it just getting lost in email, there's a record of all of those updates at what time. Imagine you have a new staff member coming in to work with you, and there are all these emails that are out in someone's email box, but you can't resend them to the new person. Well, in this methodology, you can, because all of the information is stored within your intranet. And so I want to talk a little bit about that. When we're talking about the intranet, we're talking about the organization by sites. Now, this also could be considered by teams, because a team has a site, a team has the news functionality, which is what I'm discussing here. And so you can organize by those different locations. Here, I've just genericized this and said that there was a site dedicated to managers. And now notice what that is actually is creating a security boundary. And we know this to be true across healthcare organizations and many other industries, where you have messages that are only for a specific class of staff member. Managers is an easy one to pick on. Then also we have, in the healthcare organizations, a lot of different facility-specific ones. I mean, if the cafeteria isn't open until 6 in one facility, the other facility isn't really going to think of that as a high priority news. Then there's certainly the centralized information from human resources. And then, roles that there could be an organization where the information could be available to everyone. So I put nursing here as an example, where it's not secured, but what you get is all the content based on interests of nurses in one specific location. So it certainly can be research and development, it could be oncology, it could be any type of focus area, but you're organizing content for review, for ingestion, and for pushing out from these different sites or teams. And here, really simple example of two different people who have two different roles and facilities associated with them. So when they come to the page to see news, they see different information. It's not the same information for each individual. This is not necessarily, except in the case of managers, that they don't have access to the information. It's just prioritizing the information to present to them, so they're more likely to read this. Yes, for all those thinking, well, isn't this what a website does for me? If I'm looking at Amazon, if I'm looking at any sort of news feed, maybe even a Facebook or a Twitter, that they are putting information in front of you that they believe is most interesting to you, so you're more likely to engage with it. Yeah, we're using that technology to be able to get higher engagement with news. And again, you're publishing it once, and it can be seen not just on that homepage, but actually on any of these sites and any of these pages. You can roll it up, as we usually say, to a larger audience, or you can roll it over, depending on the attributes of that individual. So it's a really powerful tool, again, to be able to create once and to have the content in multiple different places. And I slightly mentioned it before, and here's the slide. The centralized news helps adoption. And this is adoption of new technologies, increasing the rate of reading, because once you get into the habit, and yes, we're not only talking about the reader changing their habit, but also what we're talking about is the producer of the content. We talked about those centralized teams, the communications and marketing teams. Maybe it's the administrators in that department or that focus area. But once you do create that item, you can build a process, and that news item can show on the Intranet homepage. We've covered that. It can show on a dedicated news page, which we show here to the right, which is a sample of what we have deployed at several of our clients, where you can show them on one page news by role, news by department, and then an archive of all news. Then also, you can, as I said, roll over that the information shows on a facility, a department, a program page. Guess what? We're talking first about an Intranet Anywhere. That same news can be put into a news feed. It can also be put on a tab as a page of news for whatever that team is, if it's a department, program, project, what have you. And I know I don't want to say this, but I really like what Microsoft has done with the news features, is that you can actually email it. You can email an individual item, or you can email a newsletter. And why I really like this is that you're pushing the information out that you believe a person will read, but you're drawing them back into the intranet where there's more information for them to find. Also, hopefully you have the experience of editing a SharePoint page. On that page, you can have much more data than you can on an email. You can have other related news. You can send them to other locations. It can be much more interactive with videos on that page. So yes, you reach people in email or in Microsoft Teams if they're on the run, but you can have all of this really great and engaging content on that. And again, as I've said, you've built once and you've distributed it to many different places to increase the readership, increase the knowledge, the engagement. And then what we found in healthcare, and we mentioned about the challenges, is it's a time-consuming effort, but is to not only have news and good news, but have different attributes. And the most common attributes are location is simple. Role is not necessarily simple. We've seen organizations that have 15, and we've seen organizations that have 80. And you can certainly have multiple roles be interested in a news item, and then you have facility that they work at. Again, my silly cafeteria example, but it is true, right? If you saw information that wasn't for you, you go, oh, well, maybe all this other information isn't for me. And then focus area. What are you specifically working on? What are you specifically interested in? And this is what gets people to, view the content in the first place and then keep on coming back. And another thing I want to talk about with helping adoption, and so this is not just adoption of Office 365, this is adoption of any systems that you're working with, or even the new communication method, is that launch is only the beginning. Once you're moving into Microsoft Teams, once you're adopting the 25 different apps that are available to you in Microsoft 365, this communication method is only the start. And you can continually update these pages and update the refinement of the roles and the targeting, update how people are consuming. And that's the changes that we expect now because of commercial solutions, and the changes that will keep people coming back, that if they see that items are shifting and new information or new styles of delivering information are popping up, that will keep their interest. So hopefully that was helpful.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. I do have, before we go to the next question. I do have a couple of questions for you, especially around this adoption. So you mentioned, which I find too with a lot of my customers, it's hard to reach individuals and target them. And once you do, adoption kind of occurs organically. So you mentioned like location, role, facility, focused area. Is there a way to make it so that IT administration doesn't have to manually group people or add them into those groups or add them into those sites? I know a lot of my customers ask about like dynamic membership, which is something that I talk to them about a lot, where you can base it on whatever their Azure identity is and the features there, you can automatically enroll them into a group so that your IT administrators don't have to do as much manually. So do you find that that's kind of the best way to do it, or just from the setup side, making sure that you get those targets right? How do you usually recommend setting that up?
Great question, and you partially answered some of it already. Although, and even on a Microsoft call, I'll say some of that depends on licensing. So,
very true, very true.
But there are actually ways to work around dynamic groups. But the first point, to be clear, to back up, is a great point of how much of this is IT maintenance compared to business maintenance. And
right.
you can make it business maintenance in the sense of that the users are individuals, they belong to a business area, and the attributes that you're talking about are typically ones that are already in their profile, which is stored in Active Directory. So, the information is typically there. I did talk about, the one organization with like 80 different roles. That was something that did have to be worked out, but that also demonstrated how important the news and having that one single centralized news location was to them, that they're willing to figure out those classes and figure out how to target. So what they had to do was they put that information into Active Directory, into the people's profiles. And then what happens on the back end, or I guess in the SharePoint interface, I should say, is that it gets matched from that user to the content that is there. And there are a few different ways to do it. We won't go into the specific details. Dynamic group is partially one of them, but there are other ways to put people into groups to get them to view the content that is most important to them. We have a custom solution that can directly match on those profile attributes without the dynamic groups. So awesome. There are many different ways around it, but the good news is that it can be part of everyday business, and the information's usually hanging out there. And then the question is actually about content creation. So IT doesn't have to do it, but the marketing communications staff that are creating the content, they're the ones who would say, okay, these are the locations that are interested in it, these are the roles that are interested in it, these are the facilities that are interested in it, as they're generating that content. And then all the magic happens on the page that it prioritizes. I'll also make clear, this is just prioritization, unless we go back a step and we use that actual site structure that's also permissions. So this is just prioritizing content that people see.
Awesome. And we are getting some questions, and you might be addressing this later, about just your offerings with Withum in general. So whether it be just implementation overall, setting up the intranet, adoption, change management, just kind of what are the options for working with your team. But feel free to do that if you already have some slides on that. Feel free to do that later.
Actually, we didn't, but why don't we go through the next one, which is a really fun topic.
Yeah.
And then we can certainly go over that. The short answer is yes. We work with many clients on all different levels. We work with sophisticated teams just in advisory capacity. We work in advisory and hands-on implementation. And then I love using the phrase white glove. You pick what you'd like us to work with, and we'll do that. But we thank you for asking that, and we will to that person, and we will certainly answer it more. So let's go on to a really sort of fun one. I know Daniel's actually had direct experience with this, and it is talking about requests and using bots.
And that's important too, and thank you, Adam. You know, when you think back about what the topic is today, evolving intranet, intranets are evolving quickly, right? You know, you want them available everywhere. We've talked about the concept of Intranet Everywhere. You want those intranet to be highly personalized, right? And to give the information to people wherever they are. And lastly, I think intranets and digital workplace are evolving to bring a lot of automation, right? And in healthcare, there's a humongous amount of opportunity for automation, right? Content is created everywhere, right? And people are flooded with requests, right? Either they're wasting time following up on things that people requested or requests that came in. You know, people may have marketing content that needs to be created and requests coming in the organization. And organization and departments are often lacking tools to track requests. You know, how much, who's requesting this? What is the status, right? And when you think about automating processes, we've seen over the last 2 years the new concept of chatbot coming up into the internal world of departments and in healthcare, where chatbot could be this self-service concept of you know, getting the request. And Adam, if you go into the next slide, I can walk through this particular case study of you know, an organization that had a service request management challenge, right? All the departments were being flooded by requests left and right with no good accountability and way to track this. And what we've learned through studying the volume of requests initially is that most of those requests were things that people could get an answer on their own, right? And thinking about a bot, that's the purpose of it, a question and answer bot, chat bot that can field your departments from getting flooded with requests, right? The technology is there, obviously Microsoft Azure platform and the cognitive services platform has tremendous amount of capability to help you create front-end interface to relieve everyone in your departments from being, you know, just answering email all day long of questions that people can get their own answers from. In this particular case, think about the concept of if you get 100 requests in your department a day, and you could bring 75% of it to be self-serve, now you can focus on the 25% of those requests that are important. And again, what you want is a system to track those requests. And in the world of Microsoft, we've used SharePoint and Teams to deliver a bot, to create a dashboard of visibility of your request, Power Apps in the backend, both as a simple or rich form to submit the request. That request was handed out by the bot, right? The bot was fronting the conversation with the end users, and when the bot ran out of answers, the end user is being sent to, hey, fill up a form here and we'll handle your request. And that's using all the tool set that's available in Microsoft 365, from fronting the request, handling the form, the workflow behind the scene to route this request to the right place in the organization, to assign it to the proper person, for this person to work on it. And then everyone along the way, as service manager, can see status of the dashboard. If you're in charge of the department, you see the request, right? So again, the tool set is there, and that's a very interesting concept that we see intranet evolving now, from just being a place where we consume content to places where we act, take action, automate some of your business processes. And Adam, again, if you move on to the next slide, this is sort of a view of what you have, right? A SharePoint site on your intranet, and then you have a questions, hey, here's the bot, right? So that's for marketing. We've done it for IT, we've done it for operation, we've done it for patient care. The bot will ask you questions, guide you from a Q&A, guide you to get your own answer. And if the bots cannot answer, it will send you to a place where you can further ask and submit a request for a human to come in, processes, and get back to you. Guess what? The bot can be the place where you ask, what's the status of my request that I made 2 weeks ago? And guess what? The bot is intelligent enough to actually go back to your dashboard and say, here's the status, right? So very interesting concept here as we're seeing this evolving world of intranet, and I think chatbot is a new user interface. I think Satya and Adela and even Bill Gates said it a few years ago. The bots are the new or the upcoming user interface, and think about bot as a new user interface to your intranet as well.
I think the interesting thing, a lot of people had always wanted search to say, I just want one line where I can type it in. I won't mention the competitor, but they would use that as a verb, and type it in. And really, that is more akin to a bot, because what happens in commercial search is that there are tens of thousands of humans that are actually looking at that search information and improving it. So in this situation, again, what was happening, as Daniel said, is wastefulness, phone calls happening, content was being created. And this is a conglomeration of two different types of organization that are focused around marketing, but it could also be around patient information so that a doctor doesn't have to search through their tablet to find information, but they can type it in and get recommendations and be able to send patients or maybe even print documents off. So if you have that data there, you need to add just a little bit more descriptive text, and then the bot comes in and picks that up. Also, to talk a little bit about the details of this scenario too, what we added to this mix, because Q&A Maker and some of the out-of-the-box Microsoft 365 solutions are great, but one of the things that doesn't happen is capturing all the questions that don't have answers. And so there's a process in the back end that we created where the questions that were asked that don't have answers are then reviewed by the subject matter experts, and then we can then get the answer and feed it back into the bot. Or maybe it's a new piece of content. It's a new item that people keep on asking for. So it's really evolving. And it goes back to that conversation about adoption, that it is not just the launch. So launching the marketing bot would be great, but it adapts itself. There is, learning involved in a bot, but it's always that the people behind it are feeding it information, are reviewing what is going on and continually increasing its capability. Another quick example too, at Withum, we started with an IT bot, very simple, looking at FAQs from multiple sources, but now we actually have some applications that we've built to service our clients. And now that bot is branched off from just an IT bot to now it's the Withum bot, that you can ask it a wide variety of questions, and it pulls in that information from the different locations. Anywhere someone already created an FAQ list, which I'm sure your organizations already have, that the bot can send them to those different places. So it is that interface. Yeah, you have to have the information, but once you have that information, this single interface can start really guiding people. And we also mentioned that this is a page. I didn't put a view of it in Teams. So again, just like an Intranet Everywhere, this interaction point can be in multiple different places depending on where people are working. Yeah, I think you can even put it in Outlook. I'm not sure I would suggest it, but you can do that too. So those are the three key areas. I'll just answer. So here we have some simple information about how to contact Daniel and I, our landing page at Withum, our services. I mentioned briefly we work across all different types. Simply said, we help people as simple as strategize. If you're not already on Microsoft 365, what workloads can you move to Office 365? If you're already mostly there, but we've been working with, I don't know how many clients over the last 3 months, fully adopting Teams and doing it right the first time, or as close to right as you can, applying governance, how to create one, how to track one, what it's used for, naming conventions. So that's specifically with Teams. Also, I mean, infrastructure into Azure, lifting virtual desktops, really anything to improve the productivity and collaboration. Daniel talked about people, data, and content, and that's really what we believe in. The technology is secondary. We want to make your people work as effectively as possible. We want to have the content available, searchable, findable, and then we want to back all of that up with data, whether it's analytics or it's data to make decisions. So that's what we do all across the Microsoft 365 stack. We're lucky also to have additional teams across the Withum organization. We do Microsoft 365 security, but we actually have, I'll say it the wrong way because I like it so much, white hat hackers to do security audits to make sure your information is secure. We have process and auditors for SOC and other audits. If you're working with the government, meeting NIST and CMMC. So, a large plethora of services on top of Withum is originally a tax and audit service too. So we can help your business in many different ways.
If you go to the last slide on this deck, I think it speaks a lot about how we view the world of an intranet. Because one of the challenge that you're all probably facing, that those of you listening on the call or listening to the recording, is where does an intranet fit in Microsoft 365? And Adam and I have been on the SharePoint world for many years, and I think traditionally this is the place where an intranet lived. But now with Microsoft 365, there's a lot of option, and your intranet will include a lot of the other services that we have listed on this slide, right? And when you think about Withum, our digital team here at Withum, we focus on deploying large-scale or small-scale intranet digital workplace by leveraging the power of the Microsoft 365 platform and bridging the gap between, what one person could perceive as a lot of different products, right? So, we mentioned the bot, or we mentioned the chatbot concept in an intranet, deployed in SharePoint, leveraging Power Apps, Power Automate, leveraging Microsoft Forms, leveraging the bot services, the cognitive services, the machine learning services, and that bot can be deployed both in SharePoint and Teams, right? So again, everywhere access to one information that takes on a lot of the power of the Microsoft 365 platform, and not to say the least, also will help you understand what it means from a licensing standpoint too, because that's complex, right? All those things have different licensing terms and needs and concerns, and I think we pride ourselves here at Withum to allow to drive this conversation along the way as well.
Great. So Sam, do we have any other?
Yeah, we do. Thank you so much, Daniel and Adam. This was an awesome presentation. We do have some questions coming in, so I will put up whoever's video wants to take the question first. But the first one, I'm glad that you ended there with that last slide, because I think a lot of the questions coming in are around, where do I even start, right? For people on their journey of an intranet, it kind of gets to this point where you see, even just breaking it down between Yammer versus Teams versus Outlook versus SharePoint. I mean, there's a lot in the Microsoft productivity suite, but how exactly do I break this down? And like you said, it's not just the traditional SharePoint anymore or a mass email. So I think that this was a really great slide, but in terms of people that are just beginning on their intranet journey, I mean, where do you start? Where do you usually recommend starting?
I can start, and I'll pass it to you, Adam. I think I'm gonna take my business hat here for a moment, and I think that a lot of folks start with technology, and we believe that that's the wrong place to start. I mean, obviously, you have Microsoft 365, you want to leverage it. And what's important from our perspective and our experience is start with the business objective. Why are you doing this? What's important for you? What are the priorities? And then from now on, you can flow that on into technology implementation. So Adam, maybe you can give more insight on our process and our approach to that. But keep in mind, think about your why and the business objective first.
Great, thanks. So for us, where do you start? I'm sure most likely you have something right now. So typical questions, what's working, what's not, following on Daniel's comment of, business purpose first. What are the reasons that you'd like to have an intranet? Just like the bot, we talked about questions that were recurring over and over and over again. And that's typically what the intranet is there for. Also, another thing to consider is how will it be updated? What we see is the most beautiful, the most well thought out intranets of the past fail because it's relying on several people who the intranet is their third job to keep it up to date, while it's the 8th job of everyone else to put content there. And as soon as it goes stagnant, people lose trust and don't come back to it. So it's not only what you want to gain, it's also what is the reality of how it will be kept up. And then meeting those, you see what technologies you can use to achieve those goals. And as we've said, we are a strong believer that Microsoft 365 technologies are there. We do, have custom solutions because there are some gaps in what a lot of people want to use. One simple one is an employee directory. Delve has a lot of great information, but it's just not an alphabetical employee directory. If you want to search someone by location, if you want to look someone up alphabetically, thankfully, Microsoft has allowed partners like us to build those. So that's a little thing, but it's a major thing for people's interest. When you're trying to connect people to others with the same knowledge across a healthcare organization, they're looking for experts. That's how they find it. So it's important. So again, our methodology is, we call it discovery, doing that analysis first. We also, because of our over 15 years of experience, 16, 17, we have an idea of what your information architecture could be. Because it's been shown to work for most organizations. So we start you with that information architecture, and by that I'm talking about your navigation and possible site/team structure, and then we work to manipulate that to your actual business needs. So that reduces the time. And then from there, when you've decided those pieces, also embedded in that is governance. Who can do what? How can they do it? And then you start to implement, you migrate content, or we actually see a lot of organizations not migrating content, really encouraging the business to start fresh, to not lean on old ways, on old content, but to really start, as an example, new facility sites from the ground up and filling that data in fresh and not something that was been put on the page 10 years ago that no one honestly had visited. And that's a common scenario because intranets of the past were standalone. Also, you notice that we're talking about intranet and Teams interchangeably. A lot of the content could be from weekly, monthly work and can roll into that intranet. So it's live with project data, it's live with new news and announcements. So it's very interactive and up to date. And also, it doesn't rely on a specific team to always have the content and update it. So that's typically how we work. Starting is identifying what you want to do. Also, I'll say if you reach out to me for some qualified organizations, we were a Microsoft partner in 2019 to 2020 to give an intelligent workshop, intranet workshop. at the Microsoft Ignite locations. We were unfortunately only able to give one, but we did actually transform the workshop into a 2-day virtual experience. So if you want to reach out to Daniel and I, we can see if that you qualify for that. And what that does is brings first and foremost those business goals into foray, and then it demonstrates how the modern internet technologies can support it with a proof of concept all in one day. So maybe that will be interesting for the person who asked that question.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think on the offering side, it's been good to understand how exactly you can partner with them, can partner with our customers and with Microsoft to get these things done and to extend the product solution. One of the things that some of the audience members have been asking about is you gave really awesome examples on the provider side. We do have a couple people on from the pharmaceutical and also the payer side of healthcare. So one of the things that I see a lot of my pharma and payer customers are asking today about the move from Skype for Business to Teams. Obviously, Skype for Business is going end of life next July. So that's an example, and I'm sure you all have been helping there. But anything in the pharma and payer space, even on the like reusable and trackable analytics that you've been helping with, any examples there?
For pharma, actually, the request solution is similar to items that we've done for pharma organizations along not only the marketing lines, but actually also along the process of drug development. So having the different project organizations being able to know the documentation that they need to present at all of the different stages that are mandatory, not internal documentation, although some organizations do have additional on top of regulated documents. So that's something that we've assisted with, focused on business process. No one has adopted the bot yet, but very similar question structure to how they interact with that information. In one case, we have a visualization where people can see where their drug is in development and select that area and see all of the different documents that they need to do. Also in pharma, I mean, the collaborative spaces, governance for teams and SharePoint, the same, it's really funny, but the same. So it's not specifically, about a process. It's just needs for communication across different organizations.
Right.
But most companies are global. For payer, I'm not sure, Daniel, have we done anything specifically for payer organizations?
I don't believe so, but I think what the challenges that we've seen across provide healthcare-based and hospital-based organization apply across multiple side of healthcare as well.
Yeah, awesome. And there was a question around the chat bot that you mentioned. People are really excited about that. I know I've seen it even with our COVID-19 healthcare bot, just relieving a lot of my hospital customers from having to constantly answer the same questions, and then kind of sends you to a place where you can ask a live agent, whether it be in Teams or another capability. So you mentioned that it captures the that your solution actually captures the questions that don't have answers, and then they're reviewed by the SME and looped back into the bot. So can you talk a little bit more about that? That's something that a lot of our customers are using right now.
Yeah, so that's a great question, Sam. And when you think about a bot, a chat bot, there's a lot of inherent machine learning built in behind the scene capability that you guys at Microsoft has provided, right? So a lot of the plumbing has been built. But what happens is that a bot is as good as the monitoring that you put into it, right? So if you think a bot's going to live by itself and just magically works perfectly, it's not the case yet, maybe 5 years from now. But it requires tuning. It requires feeding. And the feeding you want to give is constantly monitoring the cases where the bot was not able to answer or gave the wrong answer, right? So when you design a bot, you have to be smart enough to say, here's an answer, but ask the end user, did I answer your question, yes or no? And you capture the no, right? So that you can act on it, right? Maybe the bot did not recognize the intent of the person and gave the wrong answer. You want to be able to tweak that, continue the learning process, feeding the machine with more input so that it gets better and continue to learn over time. But the specific question was about what do you do when those questions are where the bot went into an impasse, right? Just couldn't get an answer, right? And I think that if you can detect this, right, you can think about something as simple as a Power Automate flow that will just kick in and say, hey, send a notification in Teams to someone that says the bot stumbled into that questions. You should think about, fine-tuning the bot, and that notification in Teams will take you right to Q&A Maker and let you tweak that, right? So the simple things like that can go a long way, or more complex solution that, allows, a more complex process to go through as well. So lots of option there.
And I think just to take one little step back, as I've been learning about bots, is just to remind people that, like Daniel said, the bot is as only good as the information. The information quite literally is an Excel spreadsheet, a question and an answer. And yes, that's ingested into Q&A Maker, and there's more things you can do with that. So you have to have those questions and that answer. And so then that's where our data builds, a secondary Excel spreadsheet that says the question, the answer, and the no, as Daniel said. So you could, the subject matter experts can look at it and then can go back in and make those tweaks and updates. Maybe it's language, maybe it was, the answer, or again, they add a wholly new question into the system, into that originator, the Q&A Maker, and have a new answer. That was also something here. Just real quick, that, I can zoom in just a little bit, but, that how it works is that you get yes or no questions, you get linked to the information, or you get linked to a form. In this specific process, we knew that if something was new, or was a specific request, like an event, because this is a marketing process, then it needed to be created. So you then go to a workflow. So it's pretty neat how you can. It's a portal, a starting point to go and do different actions, but all based off of if that question is, is it an event? The answer is, here's a new form that, by the way, you can actually do it in the bot itself. You can say, okay, who's this for? When is the event? When do you need it by? Do you upload an image? All of that form could be filled out in the bot itself. And then sometimes it's more advanced that you have to do it outside. So it's a really, really cool experience to be able to do it all, all in one place.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. And we're right on the hour here. So just to wrap everything up, this was great content. I think we learned about a lot about how the intranet is evolving, right? From just a stereotypical landing page to now it's intranet everywhere. Love that concept that Adam and Daniel brought up. You have centralized communication. You have automatic processing with these bots. You're able to take more action in your workday, right? So really, really excited for everyone that attended. If you know people that weren't able to attend today, please feel free to direct them to aka.ms/HLS blog that we have up here. We will post this, we'll post all the slides, and then all the resources that we got from Withum today. So with that, Thank you so much, Daniel and Adam, for being here.
Thank you, Sam. Thanks for having us.